The spark that ignited the world. In the summer of 1914, Europe stood like a powder keg, dry, tense, and waiting for a spark. Empires had grown suspicious of each other. Armies were swollen with pride. Alliances were tight like iron chains linking nations into future enemies. And then on June 28, 1914, in the quiet city of Sarajevo, that spark finally came. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a young Bosnian Serb nationalist. The shot was small, but the echo was enormous. Within days, Austria blamed Serbia, Russia backed Serbia, Germany supported Austria, France aligned with Russia, and Britain watched the storm form. Europe began sliding, not running, toward a war it didn't fully understand. Borders grew tense, armies mobilized, and a chain reaction began that no leader could stop. The world was about to enter a conflict unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The descent into war, alliances lock into place. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, it wasn't just a local conflict, it was the first domino to fall. Russia mobilized its massive army in defense of Serbia. Germany, seeing Russian mobilization as a threat, declared war on Russia on August 1, 1914. France, bound by treaty to Russia, entered next. Germany then launched the Schlieffen Plan, an aggressive strategy to invade France through Belgium. But invading neutral Belgium meant challenging the United Kingdom, and Britain joined the war on August 4, 1914. In less than a week, nearly all of Europe had become a battlefield. Every nation thought the war would be short, perhaps months, but none understood the scale of destruction the 20th century's new weapons would bring. As millions of soldiers marched with pride, waving flags and singing patriotic songs, few realized they were stepping into a kind of war the world had never witnessed: mechanized, industrialized, and horrifyingly efficient. The stage was set for a tragedy that would claim millions. The Western Front, a wall of mud, blood, and steel. The German march into Belgium triggered a fierce Allied resistance. France and Britain clashed with Germany in the early battles, and soon the war ground to a halt. The Western Front stretched from the North Sea to Switzerland, a 700-kilometer scar across Europe. Soldiers dug trenches deep into the earth, building labyrinths of mud that became their homes and their graves. Life in the trenches was misery, carved into the landscape. Rats ran across sleeping soldiers, bodies decayed between the lines, and constant artillery thunder shook the ground like an angry sky. The front barely moved for years. Men fought and died for a few meters of land. The Western Front became the symbol of World War I. Endless stalemate, unimaginable suffering, and courage in the face of annihilation. Every soldier who entered the trenches stepped into a world where death whispered from every shell, bullet, and gas cloud. The Eastern Front, a war of movement and collapse. Unlike the static trenches of the West, the Eastern Front was vast and shifting. Here, Germany and Austria-Hungary faced the massive but poorly organized Russian Empire. The opening months saw one of the war's most dramatic battles, the Battle of Tannenberg in August 1914. German generals Hindenburg and Ludendorff encircled and destroyed Russia's Second Army, capturing tens of thousands of prisoners. Yet Russia's size allowed it to keep sending soldiers even after horrific losses. Winter hit brutally, freezing men where they stood. Supply lines collapsed, and hunger became a weapon as deadly as bullets. The front swung back and forth like a giant door in a storm. By 1917, Russia's internal chaos exploded into the Bolshevik Revolution. The new Soviet government signed peace with Germany, ending the Eastern Front, and allowing Germany to shift its forces west, setting the stage for the final showdown. The Middle East ignites. The Ottoman Empire enters. The Ottoman Empire joined Germany and Austria in late 1914, turning the Middle East into a new battlefield. The Allies sought to knock the Ottomans out quickly, believing the empire weak, but they underestimated both the terrain and the soldiers defending it. Now came the infamous Gallipoli campaign of 1915. British, French, Australian, and New Zealand forces attempted a massive amphibious landing to seize the Dardanelles Strait and open a route to Russia. But Ottoman defenders, led by Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, held the cliffs with iron resolve. The beaches turned into slaughterhouses. Heat, disease, and relentless Turkish fire devastated Allied troops. After months of bloodshed, the Allies withdrew. Gallipoli became one of the greatest Ottoman victories and a defining tragedy for Australia and New Zealand. The Middle East front would later see the Arab Revolt and British advances, but Gallipoli remained its most iconic chapter. Africa and Asia, the forgotten battlegrounds. World War I wasn't only a European war. Across Africa and Asia, colonial powers dragged their colonies into the conflict. In Africa, German colonies like Togo, Cameroon, and East Africa became battlegrounds where European officers commanded African soldiers to fight other Africans for European rivalries. The East African campaign was particularly brutal. General Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck led German and African Askari forces in a guerrilla war that tied down tens of thousands of Allied troops for years. Disease often killed more than bullets. In Asia, Japan joined the Allies, capturing German territories in China and the Pacific. Indian, Senegalese, Algerian, and Vietnamese colonial troops fought for European empires thousands of miles from home. Though these fronts were smaller, they showed how World War I was truly global, a war that touched every corner of the world and forced millions into battles they had no stake in. Battle of the Somme, the machine of death. In July 1916, Britain launched the Battle of the Somme, intending to break the German line and relieve pressure on the French at Verdun. On the first day alone, 57,000 British soldiers fell, the bloodiest day in British military history. Soldiers climbed over trench ladders expecting weakened German defenses, but the bombardment had failed. Machine guns tore through the advancing waves like scythes cutting wheat. Men fell in rows, but the attack continued for months. Mud swallowed horses and artillery. Shells churned the earth into a nightmare landscape. After 141 days of fighting, both sides suffered over 1 million casualties, yet the front barely moved. The Somme became the most infamous symbol of World War I's industrial killing power, a battle where human life was fed into machines of war with almost no gain. It changed Britain forever. Verdun, they shall not pass. Verdun, 1916. Germany launched a colossal offensive against France, aiming to bleed France white. Verdun held deep emotional value for the French, filled with ancient forts symbolizing national pride. The German plan: force France to defend Verdun at any cost, draining their army. For months, artillery fire shook the ground so violently that soldiers described it as the earth screaming. The iconic Fort Douaumont fell early, sending shock through France. Yet French soldiers, led by General Pétain, refused to break. Their rallying cry was, Ils ne passeront pas. They shall not pass. The battle lasted 10 horrific months. Hills became cemeteries. Forests turned into charred wastelands. When the guns finally fell silent, both sides had lost nearly 1 million men, but Verdun still stood. It became France's symbol of unbroken resistance. Jutland, clash of steel on the high seas. The only major naval battle of WW1, the Battle of Jutland in 1916, saw the British Royal Navy and German High Seas Fleet collide in the North Sea. Massive steel battleships exchanged thunderous fire in a chaotic dance across the waves. Britain lost more ships, but Germany failed to break the British blockade. This blockade slowly strangled Germany's economy and food supply, causing widespread hunger among civilians. Meanwhile, German U-boats prowled the Atlantic, targeting Allied shipping. Submarine warfare became a deadly chess game, silent, invisible, and devastating. Jutland showed that even at sea, World War I was a war of attrition. While the battle ended indecisively, Britain maintained control of the oceans, a factor that would shape the rest of the war and eventually draw the United States into the conflict.